About 5 months ago, I purchased the Rockhopper Comp 1x from a local bike shop. I've ridden it over 100 miles, and here's what I think about it so far. This review is going to be aimed more towards entry-level riders who are looking to make their first big bike purchase. I'm not going to get really technical with all the specs. If you want to see more about the specs, hit up my overview video that I did a couple months back. It'll go over each and every specific component. For the purpose of this review, we're going to be looking at who the bike was intended for, where it's intended to be ridden at, a few pros and cons, as well as a quick comparison against other bikes on the market. The bike's intended for people who are looking to get into the sport, who don't want to spend a ton of money, but they know that they're getting a bike that's not going to fall apart when they go on the trails. The Rockhopper range starts at $550 and goes all the way up to $1,200. And this bike, specifically being towards the middle, it currently costs $800 on the market. Rockhoppers have a very wide range of specifications, tire sizes, you name it. There really is a bike for everyone in this range. You can go all the way down to extra small 26-inch wheels, all the way up to extra large bikes with 29-inch wheels. I have the comp version right here, which is somewhat in the middle. Personally, for someone who's just getting into mountain biking and they're not 100% sure if they're going to enjoy the sport, I don't think I would recommend this one. I might look more towards the base model, which is going to cost you less money. And if you do decide that you like it more, you can make small upgrades or you can just sell it and buy a better spec bike. The base model Rockhopper and some of the lower spec Rockhoppers are intended more for part-time use on trails. If you're someone who likes to ride gravel roads, you do a lot of riding with your kids on the street, or you do greenways, paved bike paths, those lower end bikes are going to be a little bit better for you. And if you're looking for something that's more full-time trail, I would look more at the comp and then the higher end models. I'm not going to go in depth on all the geometry of the bike, but the baseline geometry of this bike is an upright, comfortable ride, and it's cross-country. So if you have really mellow trails, those will be considered cross-country. When you get into downhill, ragged rocks and roots, all that stuff, that's more technical. This bike is not really well suited. Now you can ride those trails, but you may not have a great time because the bike's not intended for that. Just pros of the bike is that the frame is the same in all the models. You can pay $1,200 or you can pay $550 and you're going to get the exact same frame, which is really nice. One great thing about this frame is it's all internally cable routed and it has a spot for a dropper. So even if you're paying $550, you have a spot for a dropper post. And if you don't know what a dropper post is, essentially it's a seat post like this, but it can be actuated. You can put all your weight on it and it can go down, and then you can hit the lever and it'll pop back up. This makes it easier on the trail, so you can make adjustments as necessary on the fly. Whereas traditionally you would get to the top of the trail, you'd have to drop your post and then pick it back up. It's really annoying. So it allows you to do those on the fly. One pro of this particular model, the 1x Comp, is it has a 1x drivetrain. That means there's only one gear up front and then you're gonna have multiple gears in the back. There's 9 in the rear and 1 in the front. So it's a 1x9. If this is your first mountain bike in a while, you'll probably remember back in the day, you would usually have 3 up front. You may be asking, more gears better, right? That's not necessarily true. What they've done is replace the front ones and added more in the back with a wider range. So you're essentially getting the same range as you would with 3 up front. The great thing about that is that it reduces weight. And if you want to install a dropper post, like we said earlier, you need to free up some space on the left side of your handlebar. If you have a front derailleur up there, you're not going to be able to put a lever. I mean, I guess you could, but you'd have multiple levers over on that side, which is not fun. This whole setup is provided by Microshift, which provides reliable and inexpensive drivetrains. You may not have heard of them. Most people have heard of SRAM and Shimano. I haven't had a single chain drop on this. I've had more expensive drivetrains that have had a lot more issues. This one's rock solid. So some of the lower end Rockhoppers won't have a clutch on the derailleur. And what that does is it just holds a lot more tension on the chain. So you're not going to get a ton of chain slap on your chainstay back here. Another great pro of the bike is it comes equipped with 29 by 2.3 tires, at least on the version I have. Another great thing about these tires is they're fast rolling, but they still have good grip. Now in the future I may upgrade the front tire because I think it works really well as a back tire, and it's very comparable to a WTB Trail Boss. It comes standard with Shimano M200 brakes, which I find to be really pleasant. They're a lot better than the Tektro entry level brakes that I've had before on some other bikes that cost a lot less money. These have plenty of stopping power, and you're going to get a 180 millimeter rotor in the front and 160 in the rear, which is really nice. Even some bikes at this price range just come with 160 up front and rear, so that gives you a little bit extra stopping power. They've been really good. I have no problem one finger braking. Really like them. Another great pro of this bike is the overall finishing kit. How a lot of bike brands save money is they have their own in-house brands that they use to equip things like handlebars, seat posts, seats, pedals, you name it. What Specialized has done here is they've provided their own house branded stuff, but it's really good. These locking grips are great. Probably some of my favorite ones I've ridden that have come standard on a bike. They're really nice. The handlebars are nice and wide, but they're not excessively wide, which I really prefer. It's got a short stem. Now what this does is gives you a more upright position, but it also allows you to stay more centered on the bike, giving you a comfortable ride and maintaining control. Another nice thing is the seat. The seat is very comfortable over long rides. I've ridden it 15 miles, no issues at all, so I really like that. The rims are really nice on this. They're Stout branded, which is part of Specialized. Haven't had any issues with those. And overall, it just comes with a nice finishing kit. So a lot of these things that people would upgrade right away, such as bars and stems and seat, I haven't felt the need to do any of that on this bike. When talking about cons, one good thing to keep in mind is if this is your very first mountain bike, a lot of these things may not even be noticeable to you. I remember when I bought my first legitimate mountain bike, it was a $500 bike, and I rode it and I thought it was the best thing ever because I had only ever ridden a Walmart bike. It shifted exceptionally well, the brakes were great, but as I've ridden higher end bikes, I see and I look back now, I'm like, that geometry wasn't great, the components weren't that great, but that's only because I rode higher end bikes. And if you're just getting this, you may not notice these and they may not be cons to you at all. One of the biggest cons to me is the front fork. Now, I realize they have to save money somewhere to get it at the price point that they have it, but this fork is really bad, if you ask me. It doesn't really compress a lot. There is a adjustment for the preload, and when it came from the bike shop, it was super springy, and what would happen is I would just bounce off of stuff. The purpose of a front shock is to absorb it, but keep your front tire on the ground at the same time. With this one, it was like a pogo stick. I would hit something and spring right off it. It was like it was bucking me off. So to mitigate that, I just turned the preload all the way down. So there's like essentially no preload on it at all. So when it hits something, it doesn't really spring back very much. But like I said, it doesn't even really compress very well at the same time. It does have a lockout, which what that'll do is if you're on a gravel road or something really flat or a regular road, you can just lock that out and it's like you have no suspension at all, which makes it a little bit more efficient. Micro shift drivetrain has been really good. Like I said, there's no chain drops, but I do have some negatives to say about it. The shifter that they've equipped this bike with, I really do not like very much. The problem is you have to take your finger off of the brake to shift. So you need to use your index finger to shift into a higher gear. The other thing is the cassette. Now it's 9 speeds and it goes from 11 to 42. What that means is the smallest cog has 11 teeth on it, and the largest one, the easiest gear, has 42 teeth on it. Now if you've looked at some other mountain bikes and you've seen maybe a few years ago they would have an 11 speed that's 11 to 42, and you may think, well, you got the same range in 9 gears. Now there is a downside to that. That means you're making larger jumps. So from the second to last cog to the last cog, the easiest gears, is quite a jump. Now I find myself in situations all the time where the 42 tooth one is too easy. So the largest cog, I'm spinning real fast and I wish I had a little bit harder gear. So I shift down, or shift up if you will, to the next cog, but that one's too hard. So I really wanted something in the middle, which is not a huge deal. If you're a person, you're not getting into cross-country racing, you're not trying to hit your best Strava times, it's probably not gonna matter that much. So if you're getting this for a kid or maybe yourself to do some cross-country racing, the cassette on here may not be the best. Now you can change it out for a cassette that has a smaller, like you could do a 40, an 11 to 40, and then in between it won't be such a huge jump. So if you're into that, that's something I would consider. In my last con of this bike, you're paying $800 for this bike, and it doesn't have a tapered head tube. So if you don't know what that means, is this piece right here, this is the head tube. On this bike, it's straight. It's 1 1/8 inch. Now on a lot of more modern bikes, or just bikes in general now, it seems like everybody's going towards this. More the standard is to have a taper. So that means that it gets wider at the base down here. Now this bike doesn't have it, which really limits your upgrade potential. Now Specialized may do this so that you buy some of their more expensive bikes, but these bikes go all the way up to $1,200. If I'm paying $1,200, I'd really like to see a tapered head tube. You can only go so far with it, and if you want to get something a little bit better, and then you can't. You're just going to have to upgrade to the frame. And that might be intentional by Specialized so they can sell more bikes or whatever. Some of the Schwinn's that sell at Walmart, they're starting to have tapered head tubes on bikes that are $300 and even less. I would think that a bigger brand like Specialized will be able to do that as well. Who knows, maybe here in a few years all bikes will have it. But that's another con. If you plan on getting this to do a lot of upgrades, you can only go so far with it. I want to spend a little bit of time going over a few bikes that compete with the Rockhopper Comp 1 by at a similar price point. One of the largest competitors with the Specialized is going to be the Trek Marlin 7. It costs $850 currently, and what are you getting for $50 more? Well, you're getting a Shimano Dior drive chain that is 10 speeds, so you have one extra gear over the Rockhopper, and it's a wider range. It's from 11 to 46 tooth. I've never personally ridden this drivetrain. I don't know how it works. I've seen a few reviews on it. Supposedly it does pretty well. So if you want that wider range, it might be worth paying that extra $50. It has a nice FSA crankset. The brakes are very similar. Head angle is a little steeper, but it's intended to be ridden in the same place. Beginner riders looking to do more cross-country mellow trails. The fork on this is a little bit nicer. It comes with a low-end RockShox Judy coil fork. I've heard these work pretty solid for what they are. It's going to be a little bit better than that SR Suntour on the Rockhopper. One downside with this is if you're set on getting a dropper post, you'll have to route it externally. While you see here there is internal cable routing, there isn't one in the seat tube area, so you have to route it external. It really comes down to, are you gonna pay $50 more for a slightly better drivetrain and a better fork? So the decision's really yours, but it's a really close call on this bike. Now let's take a look at a direct-to-consumer brand, Diamondback, which is a pretty popular brand. Now, some people may have told you that if you buy online from a direct-to-consumer company, you're gonna save a lot of money, they cost less, and that's not necessarily the case. For $780, Diamondback is really asking a lot for this bike. It is slightly more aggressive than the Rockhopper and the Marlin 7, but you're getting an 11 to 32 tooth drivetrain, 8 speeds, and up front here they don't put a narrow wide chainring. Well, I used to have one, but I got one on sale years ago for $300, and this would just fall off all the time. But if they put a narrow wide chainring up there, they wouldn't have to have all these chain guides. One thing about this is it only has mechanical disc brakes, not hydraulic. So they're really skimping out on a lot of things. I don't understand why they're asking this much for this bike. But to me, a Trek Marlin 7 or a Rockhopper Comp is a much better buy for your money for sure. Now you can add an internally routed dropper post. It'll kind of route here, well, come down here and then go up. That is one positive of it, and it does have a little bit more travel at 120 millimeters, but it only comes in 27.5. So if you want the bigger 29er wheels, you're gonna have to look at the Marlin 7 or the Specialized Rockhopper. Another large company that's widely available is Giant. This is their Talon 29er 2, and it's going to be similarly spec'd, kind of close to the Marlin. It's not a Judy, but it's a RockShox coil fork, so it's probably going to work out a little bit better. Hydraulic disc brakes. They are Tektro hydraulic disc brakes. Some of their lower end ones really aren't that great, but their mid-tier stuff is pretty solid. I did read that you can route an internal dropper post, so that's definitely a plus, but the biggest downside to me is going to be this drivetrain. It is a 2x system, so if you did want to add that dropper post, you're gonna have to lose the front derailleur here or get kind of creative with your lever situation. One thing I wish they would have added was at least that micro shift 1x system. It really makes a big difference getting rid of this front derailleur, and especially for new riders, they kind of get anxious and don't know when to shift that front one, and it's just one less thing to rub. It really just gets annoying, and it's annoying to adjust. But overall, not a bad bike, but at the same price for $750, I think that the Specialized Rockhopper is a little bit better buy. So that was just a quick view of some of the other bikes that are out there. Each company offers a lot of bikes in this price range, and a lot of them are very similarly spec'd. If you're looking to get into the sport of mountain biking at a budget, and you're looking for a reputable brand that is available at local bike shops as well as even online now, I would look into the Specialized Rockhopper. I've ridden this bike for about 150 miles. The only thing I've done to it is add a bottle cage. That's literally it. In its stock form, it does really well. I hope this has kind of helped you decide, if you are looking into the Rockhopper range, which one to get. So if you're more of an extreme rider, or you ride a lot and you know you're going to be primarily riding your cross-country trails or something even a little bit more intermediate, I think this is a good place to start, and you can add a few extra parts as you go. However, if you go just a few times a month, but you primarily ride with your kids, or you go on bike paths and greenways, maybe look at the lower spec ones, and if you find that you do enjoy the sport, maybe make a few upgrades. It's really not that hard. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, please like and subscribe. And if you're interested in the Rockhopper, I plan on doing a whole upgrade series. I'm going to go through, I'm probably going to change the shifter, I'm going to put a dropper post on this, I'm going to upgrade the tires and put different pedals on it. So if that's something you're interested, please stick around, and hopefully I'll see you guys soon.